Mickey Rooney plays a racist character. Now that we got that out of the way, let's continue. Hello and welcome. As you can tell with the title, I'm the Obsessed Movie Man, O.M.M. Every now and then I find a movie that's difficult for me to write a review on. Not because it's a bad movie, but because it's one of my favorite movies. At the time I started writing this review, someone told me the hardest movies to write about are the ones that you hate the most. I highly disagree. I think the ones that are the hardest to write about are the ones you love the most, because it's the goal of any critic to express why it is not only a good movie, but also why the picture affects you, both as a general film goer and as a human being, in a positive way. Those are the hardest ones for me to write because everything must be worded perfectly so that you can explain why this one in particular means so much to you, but at the same time, look at the film from a critical point of view. With that said, let me introduce you to Breakfast at Tiffany's. Breakfast at Tiffany's is loosely based on the novel of the same name by Truman Capote. The screenplay, written by George Axelrod, changed a few things from the book to fit both director Blake Edwards' vision and also appealed to Audrey Hepburn so that she was not basically playing a prostitute. But wasn't she a prostitute? We'll come back to that point in a minute. For now, let's look at the story. We're in 1960s New York on an early morning. A cab pulls up to Tiffany's jewelry store, and out of the cab comes our protagonist, Holly Golightly. Holly spends her days sleeping in, losing her apartment keys, visiting a suspected mob boss in jail, and spending her evenings with wealthy men, with her ultimate goal being to get married to one. She's thrown a curveball, however, when she meets a new resident of the apartment, Paul Varjak. He seems like a nice guy, is a writer, and even looks a lot like Holly's brother, Fred. The only thing is that Paul is dependent upon the assistance of a wealthy woman, and Paul is her gigolo. After spending time in one another's lives, it seems like they have a strong connection and are going to fall in love. Another curveball is thrown, this time to Paul, when Holly reveals she intends to marry a wealthy Brazilian. Could it be that Holly considers Paul to be like every other man she has met? A rat? It's probably a given how the film is going to end. Odds are you've seen the film if you're watching my review. Besides, the ending of the movie is on the poster. The first thing I'll say about the film is that I love how romanticized it is. Obviously, I know it's a romance movie, but I mean how it glamorizes everything. Parties, New York, falling in love, the 1960s, and of course, a jewelry store. Holly talks about this place like it's heaven on earth, and that going there always rids herself of the mean reds, which is basically her form of depression. A scene that stands out to me is the party in Holly's apartment, where all kinds of wild and crazy antics are going on. One woman is laughing and crying at herself in a mirror, another woman's hat is being set aflame, and another man is wearing an eye patch even though his eye is perfectly fine. It's crazy, but at the same time it looks kind of fun, and you end up wanting to be a part of Holly's world. The opening of the film is something that always remains in my mind. It has left an impact on me because of how quiet and simple it is. On the surface, nothing is really happening. Holly gets out of a cab, has her breakfast at Tiffany's, and then walks back to her apartment. It seems basic enough, but have you ever wondered why Holly was dressed up like that in the morning? Why was she at Tiffany's that early in the morning? The way I've interpreted it reflects a theory that a lot of people have about Holly. Is Holly Golightly a prostitute? The opening scene makes me think she is leaving either a party or a client's house, and that something happened that gave her the mean reds, which is why she's at Tiffany's. The very next scene shows that there is a man waiting for Holly outside her apartment. Holly seems to be independent, but at the same time dependent on men. It's established that she gets them to pay her $50 to go to the powder room, and she even says that she plays the field. You may be thinking that I'm speculating too much. Well, if I am, there are two things. One, there is the relationship with Paul, who is a male prostitute. There seems to be a strong connection between the two, and this is something that might illustrate something they have in common. And two, if I am speculating too much, then the movie is doing its job perfectly. The film does not need to come out and just say that she is a call girl, an escort, or whatever. All they have to do is imply it. Just like Paul tries to understand Holly, so does the audience. So far, so good. The story is delightfully charming and the characters are entertaining enough. There seems to be no problems with the movie. Here's where that changes. Oh, that's good Hollywood regret. The characterization of Yuniyoshi is easily one of the most stereotypical and offensive depictions of an Asian American I have seen in a movie that is so highly regarded. He has the buck teeth, over-the-top accent, and that ridiculous yellow face makeup. I would be more than willing to give this movie 4 stars, 10 out of 10, whatever you will, but it's unfortunate that this one character ruins it for not just me, but for countless other viewers. Apparently, Akira Kurosawa could barely talk to producer Richard Shepard after he learned that Shepard was a part of casting Mickey Rooney. Both Shepard and Blake Edwards repeatedly apologized for the casting decision years later. If you buy the Blu-ray copy of this movie, there's a short documentary offering an Asian's perspective of the Yuniyoshi character, as well as Asian characters in cinema as well. It's very much worth watching. We now move from the worst character to the best, that being Holly Golightly. Holly is something spectacular. In many ways, she is very independent, determined to do anything to get what she wants. At one point, she even remarks that she isn't aware of anything that she has never done. Holly is fairly naive, trusting suspected mob boss Sally Tomato, yet she also seems like someone who knows how the city life works, or at least the general concept of it. She's a gold digger, but is surprisingly a very likable gold digger, full of life, joy, and a lot of personality. Her agent constantly refers to her as a phony, not believing that Holly is actually what she appears to be. So what is Holly really? The way I have interpreted it, Holly Golightly is, in some ways, like Jay Gatsby from The Great Gatsby. Both throw elaborate parties, both are fairly well known, and both are hiding their problems with a champagne glass and a smile. Both of them are somewhat involved with the mob, though Gatsby is aware of this fact and Holly is not. They even both have friends who tell their stories. In Gatsby, Nick Carraway narrates the story, and in Tiffanys, Paul Varjak is writing about Holly. The big difference between the two characters is that while Jay Gatsby was looking for love, Holly Golightly was searching for a rich husband. The ironic thing is that Holly got what Gatsby wanted, and Gatsby got a bullet. The film leads us to assume that Holly is an escort, and that's how she has been making her money. My assumption still is that while this is a way of making quick cash, this job troubles her and results in her spending her time outside of Tiffany's. When she's talking to Paul for the first time, she explains that she goes there whenever she gets the mean reds, which she says is when you're afraid and you don't know what you're afraid of. It's understandable that she's upset after spending evenings with these rats, or super rats as she calls them, but what about her interactions with Paul? In the film, they spend a day together doing fun things, and they end up sleeping with each other, but when he confronts Holly again, she not only gives him the cold shoulder, she announces her intention to marry the Brazilian. I think that what Holly is afraid of is commitment. She has run away from her first marriage with Doc Golightly, she has quick flings with men as an escort, and she is trying to marry men for their money. Not to mention, she continuously rebuffs Paul's advances. The character is afraid of being tied down and not knowing if this will make her happy. She's been looking for a place like Tiffany's, a place where she doesn't get the mean reds, yet as Paul points out, she was giving herself the mean reds all along. Only when she realizes that she belongs with Paul does she finally find her happiness. Stepping away from the character for a moment, notable mention must go out to actress Audrey Hepburn, who portrays Holly. Originally, Marilyn Monroe was looked at for the role, but when Monroe stepped out, Hepburn arrived. I believe this worked out for the best because Monroe seems to be more about how seductive she can look, whereas Hepburn was always more about personality. That being said, I do think Audrey is quite lovely in this, and admit that I believe her to be the most beautiful actress to have ever graced the screen. There is something about her smile that makes one want to smile back at her, as if it gives off the feeling of reassurance and comfort. So in short, Audrey did a good job. There was a notion in Hollywood before Tiffanys that sex was bad and evil. It has always been in film, but sex was always for the bad girls. There were few exceptions, usually involving women who were married. They were allowed to have sex with their husbands, but the bad girls in films would be punished or repent their actions. You would either be good girl Doris Day or bad girl Marilyn Monroe. For a while, Audrey Hepburn was in this good girl mode, with films such as Roman Holiday and Sabrina. Once Audrey was cast in the role of Holly Golightly, she became the bad girl, but when Audrey played Holly, she made drinking, sex, and being single look less taboo to the public. But enough of my increasingly crazy ramblings about Audrey Hepburn. Let's talk about Moon River, the song highlight that was written by John Mercer, composed by Henry Mancini, and sung by Audrey Hepburn. The song itself is very soft and gentle, very much like a lullaby, and seems very carefree. It seems to reflect what Holly wants most in the world, despite her proclaiming that she just wants a rich husband. All she really wants is a simple life. It's a really beautiful song, and it's a shame that originally one of the Paramount executives wanted the song cut. Hepburn was allegedly furious and reportedly told the executive, quote, "over my dead body." Good on you, Audrey. Good on you. The film was released to the public on October 5th, 1961, and received mixed reviews. One person wrote a particularly scathing comment about the film, which read the following, quote, "The Tiffany picture is the worst of the year from a morality standpoint. Not only does it show a prostitute throwing herself at a kept man, but it treats theft as a joke. I fear shoplifting will rise among teenagers after viewing this." I wholeheartedly agree with this most orthodox person. Everyone remembers the great shoplifting scare of 1961. What was not really mixed, however, was the acting of Audrey Hepburn, with many people calling her charming and believable in her role. The look of her has become well remembered, with the little black dress becoming one of the most iconic pieces of clothing. Apparently, comic book artist Adam Hughes claimed that Audrey Hepburn was the basis for his design of Catwoman. This is even more ironic when it turns out that in The Dark Knight Rises, Christopher Nolan homages the little black dress, having Catwoman's alter ego Selina Kyle wear it. The film was nominated for 5 Academy Awards, winning 2 for Best Score and Best Original Song. It was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry in 2012. In the end, is it a big surprise that I would highly recommend this movie? While it's not the best romance movie in the world, and while it does contain one giant offensive aspect, Breakfast at Tiffany's does deserve its place in the National Film Registry for being significant to film, for better and for worse. It has a memorable lead character, a wonderful musical score, and plenty of charm and romance. So go ahead and check this movie out. Like the Cracker Jack ring in the movie, or Paul meeting Holly, you may find something special in this film, just like I did. Thanks, this is an O.M.M review. This is O.M.M, signing out.